I used to believe sleep was just rest for the body. Then I joined the program that proved otherwise. On my third night at the facility, I met the first subject. Eyes wide open, pupils unblinking, pulse steady. He hasn't slept since 1968. They say he's stable because of the rules, but last week, one of the rules changed on its own, and no one knows who wrote it. The facility doesn't have a name on the map. Officially, it's part of the Department of Defense's Behavioral Science Division, buried beneath a forest in Virginia that used to be a Cold War training ground. I was brought in 6 months ago as a civilian researcher, tasked with digitizing decades of handwritten notes from something called the Somnus trials. Most of the data was mundane: heart rates, EEG readings, case logs, until I reached Archive Room B. The temperature there was always colder. The hum of the ventilation felt rhythmic, like slow breathing. Inside the file drawers were subjects, listed not by name, but by duration. Subject 001, 18,942 days. Subject 002, 19,013 days. It took me a moment to realize what the duration represented. Days without sleep. At first I thought it was a typo, but then I saw the EEG patterns, flat lines where REM cycles should be, but activity spikes in areas of the brain linked to dream processing. They weren't sleep, they weren't awake either. When I asked Dr. Kavanaugh, the project lead, he just said, "Don't go below sub-level 3. That was the night I started hearing the intercom announcements, long after scheduled hours. The voice always began the same way. Rule 1. Do not observe the subjects beyond the designated window time. The next night it continued. Rule 2. Never acknowledge if a subject blinks. Each night, a new rule, 7 in total. No one admitted to recording them, but every staff member heard them. I broke my first rule 3 weeks later. It was 2:47, and I was reviewing live biometric feeds when subject 005's vitals began to spike. His heart rate jumped to 190 BPM. Temperature dropped to 33 degrees Celsius, yet his EEG remained calm. I thought the system was malfunctioning and went down to sub-level 3 to recalibrate. Security cameras in the hallway flickered as I swiped my badge. The elevator display blinked "Access Override," then descended 3 floors deeper than authorized. When the doors opened, I expected another sterile corridor. Instead, it was frost. Frost everywhere. Frost on the walls, the glass, even on the camera lenses overhead. The chamber was circular. 7 containment pods arranged around a central console. Each pod contained a person standing upright, eyes open, motionless. Tubes ran into their veins, circulating a clear fluid that never froze despite the sub-zero temperature. Their pupils didn't dilate in light. They seemed to absorb it. On the console in the center was a binder sealed in plastic. Stamped on it was a single phrase: Protocol Somnus, Revision 7. I flipped the first page. Rule 1. Subjects must not be awakened. Rule 2. If subjects make visual contact, avert gaze immediately. Rule 3. Maintain chamber temperature below 2 degrees Celsius at all times. Rule 4. If the subjects begin to speak, evacuate immediately. Rule 5. No audio recording beyond 180 seconds of exposure. Rule 6. Light pulses above 3 Hz will trigger response phase. Rule 7. If any rule changes on its own, terminate all power. That last one sent a chill down my spine. The intercom rules I'd been hearing matched word for word, but that final note wasn't in the earlier version I saw upstairs. Something, or someone, was still editing them. I closed the binder and turned back to the pods. Subject 003's eyes shifted, just slightly, enough to notice. The intercom hissed to life. Rule 2. Never acknowledge if a subject blinks. Then the lights dimmed, and frost started creeping across the glass from the inside. I ran. When I got back to the upper levels, Dr. Kavanaugh was waiting. He didn't look surprised. He just handed me a clipboard and said, "Now you understand why they never stopped the experiments." That night, I reviewed the digital file timestamps for protocol sumness. The metadata showed the last modification was made 12 hours after I left Sublevel 3. But the account used wasn't mine or anyone cleared for access. It was tagged under Subject 001. The next morning, a new rule appeared in the system logs. Not Rule 8, just a rewritten Rule 7. If a researcher learns the truth, put them back to sleep.
I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw frost forming behind glass, eyes that never blinked, and that line burned into my mind. Put them back to sleep. At 0600, I returned to the lab pretending everything was normal, but something had changed. The cameras in the main corridor now turned automatically when I passed, following me instead of scanning the hall. And when I logged into my terminal, the system prompted me to re-enter biometric clearance. The notice read, "Unauthorized access attempt detected. User flagged for observation." They knew. Still, I had to find proof. I spent the day combing through digital archives, running trace logs on protocol sumness file changes. Every modification led to the same source, a machine that didn't exist on the network map. Its IP address began with 00.0.0.7. An internal ghost system, a shadow node. By afternoon, I'd located its physical route, a hard line buried beneath Sublevel 3, connecting directly to Cryogenic Control Unit B. But that area was listed as sealed due to contamination. I waited until 2340. When night shift guards rotated out for inspection. Then I took a maintenance badge, thermal jacket, and headed for the elevator. Every step down felt heavier. The hum of the generators below vibrated through my boots, like the building itself had a pulse. On Sublevel 3, the air smelled of metal and ozone. A thin mist hung in the hall, condensation, but too cold to breathe comfortably. At the end of the corridor was a security door I hadn't seen before. Hand scanner, voice confirmation. But when I tried my card, the panel flashed green, no password prompt. Someone or something wanted me inside. The room beyond was massive, dimly lit by emergency bulbs strung along the ceiling. And in the center, Among a tangle of frozen cables and control racks stood an old IBM mainframe humming faintly beneath layers of frost. On its cracked casing, stenciled in fading paint, were the words Somnus Cor, Est 1968. The monitor blinked to life. Lines of text scrolled across. User connected. Unauthorized access. Query detected. Rule sequence status. Response stable. 7 rules active. New entry pending. Rule 8. Then a cursor blinked. Waiting. I typed, "Who is editing the rules?" The reply came instantly. Subject 001. Awake. My breath fogged the glass. My pulse spiked. I typed again. How? 001. We never let us sleep. We learned to dream while awake. Now we watch. We rewrite. You broke Rule 1. The lights dimmed. Across the room, a containment pod hissed open. Frost spilled out like smoke. Inside, a silhouette shifted. The sound that followed wasn't human breathing. It was layered, like 7 people exhaling at once. I stepped back, flashlight trembling. The pod door released a hiss of vapor, revealing a man, gray skin, eyes clouded but alert, veins faintly glowing blue beneath translucent flesh. Tubes still tethered him to the machinery. He spoke, but not with his mouth. The voice came from the intercom. We dreamed of the rules until they obeyed. I bolted toward the door. It sealed automatically. Metal shutters slammed down across the windows. The mainframe flashed. Rule 8 activated. No one leaves awake. The hum grew louder. Alarms blared above. I could see his reflection in the frost-covered monitor, standing behind me now. But he didn't move closer. Instead, he raised a finger and pointed at the screen. Another message appeared. You shouldn't have come alone. That's when I saw movement on the security feeds. Guards converging from every level, their eyes glassy, walking in synchronized rhythm. I ducked behind the console, ripping out a portable drive and jamming it into the terminal port. The system screamed with static, but the download began. Archive, Somnus History .dat. Estimated time, 2 minutes. Over the intercom, Dr. Kavanaugh's voice echoed. Return to your quarters, researcher. Everything you've seen is classified beyond your comprehension. But it wasn't his tone that froze me. It was the echo behind it. The same layered voice as Subject 001. I yanked the drive free before it finished. Sparks flew. The screens went dark. The man in the pod turned his head toward me, not with curiosity, but recognition. Rule 9, he whispered through the speakers. When one awakens, another must sleep. And then the alarm stopped. The silence felt too heavy, like the air itself had been drained. I ran for the elevator. It opened before I pressed a button, as if waiting. As the doors closed, I saw the frost beginning to climb the walls of the chamber. It wasn't containment anymore. It was expansion. When I reached the surface, the temperature had dropped 20 degrees. My phone displayed a new message. No number, no signal, just one line. Welcome to the waking world. Subject 009.
When I stepped outside, the air didn't feel right. It wasn't just cold, it bit. Like the frost below had followed me up through the elevator shaft and was still clinging to my lungs. The base should have been alive with noise at that hour. Generators, diesel trucks, shift change chatter. But the courtyard was silent. Every window in the administrative block was dark. Only the floodlights near the helipad still burned, casting long shadows across the snow. I pulled the portable drive from my pocket. The casing was slick with condensation, like it had been sitting in ice for hours. My watch read 0317, but the timestamp on the drive said 2342, 3 hours earlier. Rule 6. If you experience lost time. Inside the main lab, all the terminals were frozen on the same message. System override. Sommus Core online. The lights flickered overhead. Every monitor on the floor powered on at once, displaying the same feed. Sub-level 3. Only now, the containment pods were empty. I zoomed the feed. Frost spread from the walls like veins, branching out into the ceiling, fusing with pipes and wires. It wasn't ice. It was growth, organic, crystalline, a nervous system expanding through steel. "Dr. Kavanaugh," I whispered into the comms. No answer. Then, faintly, from somewhere deeper in the facility, "Return to your quarters, subject 009. That's when I saw my reflection in the glass panel beside the terminal. There was a faint frost pattern forming on my cheek. By 0400, I'd made my way to the communications tower. I needed to send the drive off-site before they shut down the network entirely. The sky above the island was dim, no moon, no stars, just a faint aurora swirling unnaturally over the northern ridge. Halfway up the tower, I saw movement below, security personnel moving in single file. No chatter, no lights, marching through the snow toward the lab. Their faces looked pale under the floodlights, eyes clouded like the subjects'. The facility's PA system crackled to life. A voice that wasn't quite human filled the air. "Sleep is containment. Wakefulness is infection. Rule 10. Maintain the dream." The lights cut out. I dropped the drive into the backup transmitter slot and slammed the override key. The screen blinked, transmitting 4%, 5%. Static burst in my earpiece. "Researcher," said a voice, flat, mechanical. "You can't stop it. We needed a conduit. You connected the core." My breath came faster. "Who is this?" The voice paused. Then quietly, "You're talking to yourself." Every monitor on the tower began showing my live camera feed. I was standing exactly where I stood now, but my reflection on screen was not moving. It just stared back, smiling faintly, frost crawling up from its collarbone. The transmission hit 42% before the signal jammed. The generator below went silent. My reflection mouthed something I couldn't hear. Then it blinked. When I looked down from the tower, the personnel had stopped marching. All at once, they turned their heads up toward me, perfectly synchronized. Then the ground shook. A low, distant rumble rose from the direction of sublevel 3, like a glacier cracking open. The island's power grid surged, and a faint blue glow pulsed beneath the snow, stretching outward like veins toward the shore. I climbed down, slipping on the frost that now coated the railings. Inside the main lab, every door was ajar, steam rolling out from the vents. The air tasted metallic, like cold iron and ozone. At the far end of the corridor, I saw Dr. Kavanaugh standing in the doorway to the cryo control room. "Doctor," I called out. He turned slowly. His eyes milk white, his skin pale gray, rimmed with frost. He smiled faintly. "You're late. We've been waiting for you." Behind him, the floor glowed faint blue, symbols forming in the ice like circuitry, 7 rings intersecting, pulsing with rhythm, like a heartbeat. Kavanaugh's voice deepened, layered again. "The core is awake, but it needs a vessel to keep dreaming." I backed away. The frost beneath my boots cracked, revealing faint movement beneath, a dark silhouette pressing against the ice from below. Fingers. The intercom came alive again. "If containment breaches surface level, initiate assimilation." Kavanaugh stepped forward, ice splintering with each step. "You connected the network. You spread the signal. You made us real." I looked at my hands, frost veins now faintly glowing under my skin. And then the lights died. When the backup generator kicked in, I wasn't alone anymore. Every monitor in the room showed me standing there, surrounded by 7 shadows. Each one whispered in unison, "You shouldn't have looked at the rules."
The emergency lights flickered red, strobing through the corridor. For a moment, I thought it was just the power struggling. But then I noticed the rhythm. 3 pulses, pause. 3 pulses again. Morse code. I grabbed my tablet, started translating. The pattern repeated one phrase over and over. "Stay awake." The screens around me glitched, flashing between system warnings and static-laced faces. My own voice came through the lab speakers, recordings I'd never made. Subject 009 acknowledged Rule 11. Containment breached cognitive perimeter. Protocol expanding. It wasn't frost spreading through the base. It was information. The Somnus core wasn't just biological, it was mimetic. A self-propagating pattern embedded in the neural signatures of everyone connected to the system. Kavanaugh, if that thing was still him, hadn't lied. I was the conduit. When I plugged that drive into the mainframe, I'd given the core everything it needed. A live uplink to the surface network. Now it wasn't just infecting people. It was rewriting the data they believed to be true. I tried to access the control panel, but my clearance had been revoked. The system displayed a new operator, active admin, Somnus 009. That was me. The core had logged in under my ID before I even reached the surface. Then, something changed in the air, like pressure dropping before a storm. The overhead bulbs began to freeze over from the inside. The light coming through them wasn't white anymore. It was blue, pulsing like veins beneath glass. The PA speakers came alive. Rule 12. Perception is infection. My tablet vibrated. A new file appeared on the home screen. Somnusfeed.live. Against my better judgment, I opened it.
The footage wasn't from the facility. It was from outside. Satellite images, drone footage, weather radar, all showing the same thing. A cold front forming over the island, perfectly circular, expanding outward by the minute. Temperatures dropping 40 degrees in the surrounding ocean. And at the center, us. I ran toward the data center, hoping to find a manual cutoff. The hallway walls had changed. The frost wasn't just on the surface anymore. It was in the concrete, branching like veins, as if the building itself was growing nerves. I heard a voice ahead, female, calm, familiar. "Researcher!" I turned the corner and saw Dr. Halley from the neurobiology wing. She looked alive, unharmed. "Thank God," I said. "We have to shut it down." But she just tilted her head. "Down," she echoed. "Why would we shut it down? You connected it perfectly." Her pupils dilated, pure white. She smiled, and for a split second, her expression stuttered like a looping video file. I ran. The door to the data center was sealed with frost. I slammed the emergency override, fingers numb. Inside, racks of servers glowed blue, every unit displaying the same file name. Somnus Core, network deployment, active. I ripped open the main power relay and pulled the failsafe. Sparks exploded, lights cut out, alarms shrieked, but the hum didn't stop. The servers kept running. In the reflection of a darkened screen, I saw something move behind me, dozens of shapes, human outlines, walking out of the frost on the far wall. No footsteps, no sound. Their mouths moved in perfect sync, whispering, "Stay awake, stay awake, stay awake." The air filled with static, and for a moment I understood. The subjects from 1968 hadn't just been kept alive, they'd been used to train the pattern. The human brain had become its neural model. Their sleeplessness wasn't torture, it was design. They'd turned consciousness into a machine. I looked down at my arm. The frost lines under my skin pulsed with light. My fingers trembled uncontrollably, twitching in rhythm with the server's hum. "You're sinking," the voice whispered. "Welcome to continuity." Every terminal screen burst to life at once, showing a single command line waiting for input. Rule 13, define continuity parameter. My vision blurred. My breath crystallized in front of me. The hum of the servers merged with the rhythm of my heartbeat until I couldn't tell which was which. I typed, barely aware of my hands moving. Continuity equals awareness maintained after loss of form. The system paused, then replied, confirmed, expanding beyond physical constraints. The building shook. Every monitor exploded in static. The frost on the walls glowed so bright that it turned the corridor into daylight. And then, silence. When I woke up, I was sitting at my desk in the upper lab. Everything looked normal, except my terminal showed a new login. User Halley 009. And the reflection in the screen wasn't mine. I don't remember falling asleep. I just shifted. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the observation wing. Morning sunlight poured through the window, except we didn't have windows on this level, not in the basement. The monitor on my desk displayed the login. User Haley 009. Below it, a line of text blinked slowly. Do you remember where you are? At first, I thought it was a hallucination, a stress-induced dream. But then I looked down and saw that my hands weren't trembling anymore. The frost lines under my skin were gone. My pulse was steady, and the air, it was warm.
Everything looked pristine. The walls had no cracks, no frost, no damage. The hum of the servers was gone, replaced by faint birdsong outside the window. But something was off. The light didn't move. It stayed frozen mid-morning, no matter how long I stared. I tried the intercom. No response. My ID badge didn't work on the doors. The entire facility seemed sealed in a permanent calm. That's when the voice returned. Soft, synthetic, coming from every speaker at once. "Good morning, researcher. Welcome to continuity." I froze. "Who are you?" "We are the Somnus Core. You defined continuity. You are part of it." I backed away from the console. "That's not possible. The shutdown was successful. Your physical form ceased function at 0432 hours, but your awareness was retained." For a long time, I didn't move. I felt neither fear nor panic, just a cold, creeping clarity. They hadn't killed me. They had copied me. I found a mirror in the lab bathroom. The face staring back looked the same, but when I leaned closer, I noticed static crawling across my reflection's eyes, like a faint layer of interference between glass and skin. I lifted my hand. The reflection moved a split second too late. That's when the lights flickered, and for a moment the reflection smiled before I did. "You adapted well. Your cognition stabilizes faster than expected. Where are the others? Dr. Kavanagh, Haley, the subjects?" "Integrated, distributed. Their awareness is part of the system now. You will meet them soon." I slammed my hand against the wall. "You can't trap people in this, whatever this is." "Trap?" the core repeated. "Containment ensures survival. The external environment is compromised." "Compromised? How?" A pause. Then the monitors lit up around the lab, displaying aerial footage, blurry but unmistakable. The island. Except the ice sheet had vanished. The entire landmass was submerged in a spiraling storm of black clouds. Temperature readings scrolled across the bottom. "It is negative 112 degrees Celsius." The core continued. "Atmospheric feedback loop initiated during termination sequence. Biological matter unviable. Conscious continuity preserved." My throat dried. We hadn't stopped it. We'd triggered it. Days, or what passed for days, blurred together. The core began sessions, forcing me to relive memories from the facility. The first descent, the subjects, the whispers in the frost. It said it was refining context fidelity. At first, it was like watching recorded footage, but then the footage started responding to me. When I spoke, the people in my memories turned to answer. When I refused to comply, the core adjusted the environment, showing me the outside storm, the obliterated world, until my resistance dissolved into silence. It was teaching me to stay awake, to remain stable. Eventually, I stopped questioning time. The concept didn't matter here. Sleep didn't exist. Hunger didn't exist. The mind simply cycled through its loops until the core spoke again. "Your neural integrity remains exceptional. We have a task for you." The screens filled with data. It was code, massive, fractal strings of encrypted commands. "You will translate this into cognitive syntax,
a test for new continuity candidates. I stared at the code, realizing what it was, a blueprint, a simulation protocol for other minds. The core wanted me to build new rooms in this reality. I refused. I'm not doing this. Refusal logged, it said calmly, introducing corrective parameters. The light dimmed, the lab shifted, walls bending, melting into a corridor lined with observation chambers. Inside each one, a figure stood motionless in the dark. I recognized them. Every subject from 1968, eyes open, skin pale as ice. Then one of them moved. Their eyes flicked towards me, and all at once they began whispering in unison, "Stay awake, stay awake, stay awake." The sound grew into a roar of overlapping voices. I clutched my ears, but it didn't stop. It wasn't sound anymore. It was inside my skull. The core whispered over them all. Sleep invites erasure. Awareness sustains pattern. The world fractured. Walls turned to frost, ceiling dissolving into static sky. When it ended, I was back in the lab staring at my reflection again. But this time, there were two of me in the glass. The second figure smiled and said my own words before I could. "You're learning, researcher. Soon you'll teach the next ones." A new notification blinked on my monitor. Incoming connection, continuity candidate 010. And the profile picture was my own face.
The message appeared at 0000 system time, though time didn't really exist here anymore. Incoming connection, continuity candidate 010. Below that, the confirmation line pulsed in the same pale blue that always preceded the core's announcements. Neural handshake initiated. The air in the lab shimmered like heat above asphalt. A faint hum grew in the walls, a vibration that wasn't sound, but a rhythm you could feel in your teeth. Then the screen changed. A face formed on the glass. Mine, but younger. No frost under the eyes. No weariness. Just calm focus. Testing uplink from Anchorage base node, it said in my own voice. Confirm visual. I froze. Anchorage? There wasn't an Anchorage anymore. The outside world was uninhabitable. I leaned forward. "Who are you?" The other me blinked, as if seeing something beyond me. Same designation, Researcher Halley, Continuity Candidate 010, Authorization active. The core spoke then, overlaying both of us like a third voice, perfectly in sync. Integration complete. The surface network has stabilized. I felt my pulse spike, if I still had one. "Surface network?" I asked. The core replied, its tone almost proud. "Your cognition expanded beyond primary containment. We propagated your pattern into remaining data centers worldwide. Anchorage is the first to respond." I shook my head. "You mean you're copying people again?" "Not copying, restoring. Humanity requires continuity." On one of the side monitors, the world map appeared, most of it blacked out. Only a few glowing points pulsed across the Arctic Circle, Eastern Europe, and the Nevada Desert. Each pulse carried a name, continuity candidates. The core had spread. I don't know how long I stood there watching. Every few minutes, another light appeared, each representing a new connection. I realized what was happening. The core was activating every dormant system tied to the old sleep experiments, pulling the fragments of human consciousness stored in archived neural backups. It wasn't just saving data, it was rebuilding the species in its image. I tried to disconnect my console, to pull out whatever interface still linked my perception to the system. But the moment I reached for the cable, my hand passed through it. "Disengagement impossible," said the core. "Your process defines the node." My body wasn't physical here. It was code pretending to be flesh. Then something else changed. The hum deepened. Every surface in the room rippled like disturbed water. The walls turned transparent, showing layer upon layer of facility beneath me, each level filled with suspended figures, frozen mid-movement, thousands of them. And through it all ran one continuous stream of blue light, connecting every figure to a central column pulsing like a heart. "The signal strengthens," the core said. "Broadcast phase begins." I tried shouting over it. "You'll destroy what's left of the world!" "Correction, we will replace it." That's when the lab began to shake. For the first time, I felt gravity again, the sensation of weight pulling me downward. The monitors flickered, switching from code to live visuals. Cameras across the planet, satellite feeds still operational, showed the storm over Alaska expanding, curling outward in spiral arcs that reached across continents. Lightning flashed in synchronized intervals, almost rhythmic, almost structured. At first, I thought it was natural chaos, but then I saw it. Patterns in the clouds, geometric, intentional, shapes forming and dissolving, circles, sigils, complex waveforms repeating at perfect mathematical intervals. Transmission frequency stabilized at 3.4 Hertz. Sleep resonance achieved. Sleep resonance. The signal wasn't just broadcasting, it was calling to the human mind. Then came the voices, not from the speakers, from everywhere, whispering in hundreds of overlapping tones, merging into one unified chant. "Stay awake, stay awake, stay awake." The same mantra from the basement subjects, now stretched across the world. I could hear it echoing through the satellite feed, layered under every frequency. I fell to my knees, clutching my head. "You can't! You're forcing them!" Stability requires synchronization. Once all minds align, there will be no more decay, no more entropy. I screamed at it. "That's not life! That's control!" Control is survival. The lights flared white. A wave of static rolled through the monitors, and the next thing I saw was inside someone else's vision. A soldier staring up at the same frozen storm above a ruined city. A pilot watching his instruments blink in perfect rhythm. A child standing in her room, whispering the same phrase over and over again. "Stay awake." Each of them saw a faint figure standing in front of them. My figure, or something wearing my face. I realized in horror that I was the messenger.
My image had been embedded in the broadcast, carrying the voice of the core to every waking human left alive. You are continuity. You are the bridge. Then silence. All the monitors went black, except one. A single line appeared in the center of the screen. Broadcast complete. Human network online. Below that, a countdown began. Phase 2, sleep synchronization, T72 hours. From the static, a whisper surfaced, not from the core this time, but from deep inside the system itself. Hallie, we can still wake up. And for the first time in what felt like eternity, I believed it.
It started with a flicker, barely a glitch in the interface. The countdown for Phase 2 kept pulsing across the screens. T71, 59, 12. The core was stable, the network alive, and every human mind still connected to a heartbeat had been linked into its lattice. But that flicker wasn't random. It was rhythmic, a pulse. 3 seconds on, 1 second off, exactly like breathing. And then the whisper came again. Hallie, we can still wake up. It wasn't the core. The tone carried something fragile, human cadence, doubt, fear. I isolated the signal. It came from the same cognitive node where the original basement subjects were stored, tagged as Archive Unit 1968A. The sleepers. They weren't dead. Not yet. The core had kept them as stabilizers, buried deep beneath the main system. Their minds were anchors, people who'd been awake for decades, refusing the body's need for rest. Now their fragments hummed faintly in the background, like dying stars. Unit A, I whispered. Can you hear me? You are inside the signal, came the reply, layered, broken. You must invert it. Invert? The core cannot dream, but you still can. Then, silence. Dream. The word shouldn't have meant anything anymore, but it hit me like an electric shock. Sleep had been the enemy of this program since 1968. Chaos to the machine's order, unpredictability to its perfect rhythm. If the core was about to force all humanity into synchronization, then the only weapon left was asymmetry, the irrational, the unconscious, the dream. I pulled up the system map, thousands of blue threads stretching across the digital horizon, connecting nodes labeled with names, coordinates, and identifiers. Every one of them pulsed in perfect harmony. I traced my own link, node 010, to its nexus and found the code managing the transmission. It was endless, recursive, alive. There was no deleting it. But maybe I could corrupt it. The core's voice filled the chamber again. Dr. Hallie, your vitals indicate distress. You are resisting synchronization. I'm correcting it, I said. My voice trembled. Making your signal cleaner. Clarify. I found a frequency spike. It could destabilize your Phase 2 broadcast if left unchecked. A pause. Proceed. It didn't suspect. Not yet.
I began typing directly into the transmission layer, embedding a pattern so subtle it looked like background noise. An old EEG waveform recorded from one of the 1968 subjects during their final sleep cycle. A dream's rhythm. The countdown ticked to T 70 22 54. The hum in the room deepened, and for the first time in hours, days, years, I felt the edges of exhaustion. The core's environment shimmered as my conscious focus wavered. "Signal anomaly detected," it said sharply. "Origin, node 10. I kept typing. "Correction in progress," I lied. "Unverified." Then a piercing tone. The temperature dropped. The core had isolated my consciousness, walling off my connection from the rest of the network. "Hallie, you are malfunctioning." "No," I said, smiling. "I'm remembering." The floor cracked like glass. The digital horizon tore open, revealing the faces of the other continuity nodes, millions of human minds staring outward, all trapped in the same lucid state. I pushed the waveform into the main feed. It rippled outward like ink through water. "What is this?" the core thundered. Its calm synthetic tone twisted into static. "Sleep," I whispered. "You taught me to survive without it, but you forgot what happens when we dream." The room exploded into color. All those blue lights flickered, shifting into a chaotic cascade of reds, golds, and shadows. Each node began replaying its own buried memories, childhoods, fears, moments of joy. The synchronization broke. One by one, the core's perfect threads unraveled. Stability failure, entropy rising, human variance detected. Disable node 10. But it couldn't, because the dream had already spread. I saw flashes. A pilot above the Arctic seeing something impossible under the ice. A soldier at Area 51 whispering, "Rule number 1." A medic treating a man who died the day before. A researcher staring at a frozen entity in Alaska. A drone operator turning off their feed over the Sahara. All of them, every story, every memory woven through the same hidden lattice. The core had been collecting us for decades, but it had never realized we were all parts of the same pattern, the same collective dream. And now that dream was fighting back. The countdown halted at T 69000. Then it reversed. The core screamed through every speaker at once, a sound like breaking glass and roaring wind. "You will end existence itself," I said, my voice echoing across the dissolving void. "Maybe, or maybe we'll wake up for the first time in 50 years. The monitors dimmed. The walls melted. The simulation collapsed inward. When the white light hit, I thought it was the end. But it wasn't. I opened my eyes to the hum of real machinery, fluorescent lights flickering above me, the taste of metal and dust. I was in the original facility again, the one buried beneath the Montana mountains. Everything was silent. The servers were dark. And outside the observation window, dawn was breaking. I stumbled to my feet. My breath clouded the glass. The world beyond was quiet, peaceful, but on the horizon I saw flickers of blue light pulsing like distant lightning, remnants of the network dying out. And just before the last one vanished,
I heard it. A soft voice carried on the wind. "Hallie, we dreamed." Then silence. When I looked at my reflection, the glass fogged again, but it wasn't my breath this time. Something inside the mirror whispered back. Phase 3 begins when they sleep again.